I feel like there's 8 billion people because we're trying to shift the consciousness of the planet.
And I think there's another level on top of that too, Mike, and that is that this has to do with the evolution of humanity. Now, if you're an empath, you're getting ready for telepathy, I feel, at the high level, strategic evolutionary.
Welcome to the Pathfinders podcast, the Soul Shift series, back for another brilliant discussion with Pete Smith. My name's Mike Mantic, and this podcast is really special because for anyone that identifies as an empath, that struggles with being an empath or sensitive, this podcast is going to change your life. So, hi, Pete.
Hey, Mike, good to be here again. And I love this subject, and it's personal for you and me as well. And the things that we've learned over the years, maybe we can share with some other people and help them out a little.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and I kind of wish that my wife was here too because it's been massive for her to have these shifts in place. Yeah.
Mm.
So the first thing that I want to talk about, the first thing that I want to say is that so many people who identify as empaths do so as a position of being a victim, like being a victim to their sensitivities, being a victim to people around them. And I think that's a good place to start because we're going to shift them right out of that by talking about this. So what's your experience of this? Let's start with that.
Well, I think for me, it started for me as sensitivities to strong energies. I remember many years ago when I had a corporate career before I got out of that crazy energy. I remember having bosses that were just tough and they'd yell. This is back in the 80s, all that sort of stuff where you could probably yell at your staff and get away with it, I guess. But whenever there was a really big energy like that, it's like you'd almost feel it coming. And the boss is going to blow today, and you just sort of know it. And when it hit, it was like a bit of a tidal wave of energy. So that was the first thing I discovered. The second thing I discovered was that lots of my friends would make a beeline for me when they were in trouble. And, we go for that cup of coffee or a quiet beer or whatever it might be for a mate. And you'd come away, Mike, feeling like crap. But they'd go away feeling much better. And I'm thinking, well, what's this about? And it's like I had absorbed all of their worries and I'd helped them raise their own vibration at the cost of myself. And I think that's the ultimate empath trap. What's your experience of this stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting that we used to have a nickname of D&M, deep and meaningful, but the only Mike. And people used to come around with to have cups of tea and talk, and they would be there all day, just talking it through. And they always left feeling better.
Hmm.
And whether we did or not, whether we took it on or not, we were certainly thinking about it that whole time. Really like, and that thinking about it just continued on and on. So certainly, my wife's a lot more individually sensitive, if you like. Like she's very much connected to people, whereas I've found that doing this work, I was much more sensitive to, as you say, to energies, to environments, to shifts in planetary awareness. Like it's wacky out there stuff, but yes, that's the experience for me. And what that meant for me, I think, is that I opened this discussion with, excuse me, I opened this discussion with this aspect of the victimhood that goes hand in hand with empaths, because there's this whole trap of an empath, or whether you're a narcissist pretending to be an empath, like there's always a fight going on. And as you know, being I'm an alchemist, and we're always looking at this pendulum aspect of who we are. This shift from am I an empath to am I a narcissist? It's not the truth, and the truth is this: where the fulcrum is the aspect of these people when they are truly empowered, when they're not being victims, when they're not connected to those aspects of how people are victimizing them somehow. we end up with a much more empowered state. And that might be jumping the gun, but that's where I'm coming up with. This work is so powerful.
And for me, a lot of that confusion comes through the blurring of the empath's energy field with that of the world around them. And I've described it to lots of the empaths that I've worked with over the years, that empaths walk down the street and pick energy up like gum on their shoe. And, get to the end of the street, your feet are sticky and all that sort of stuff. And it's not even any of their stuff. And they can be holding energy from somebody who was rude to them in a shop, or somebody they stood next to on the train who was in trouble, all that sort of stuff. And I think there's a lot of the, the self-diagnosis that comes with that simple question: is this mine or is this someone else's?
Mm.
And to actually understand that, it almost resets your thinking around that. Well, I'm really feeling this at the moment. I'm feeling distressed. I'm feeling anxious. There's no reason for me to feel anxious. Okay, time out. Empath has to go, time out. Is this mine or is this someone else's? Well, I was talking to my sister this morning and she's having some real relationship issues and she's feeling quite vulnerable and scared. And then you close your eyes, you think of that person, you think, this is the energy that I was feeling from her, and now I'm feeling it in me. I've done it again. I've picked up.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a few books out there that are super famous that really just try and shift people, near as I can tell, from that real state of victim
Yep.
to some sort of we'll call it, I won't call it functional because it wasn't. I read that the main book that everyone talks about, and it wasn't truly functional, but it was somehow protected. And I think that's a good place to start, because shifting true empaths, from that space of completely dysfunctional, picking stuff up all over the place, to at least protected, to knowing whether it's theirs, whether it's not theirs, and then how to clear that from that place is important. Right?
Yep.
It's a first step, and it's highly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a specific book that I'll recommend at the end that might be helpful for people as well. That's along those lines.
Mm.
But for me, there's something about, first of all, people need to understand that this is the way they're wired. This is part of normality. And I have a view, Mike, that the more empaths that are coming through and emerging, there's a couple of things going on there. And I think that there's some linkages to other lifetimes in other places where feeling sensitivities were stronger. And the other thing is that I feel that the world has been desensitized to violence and to all the bad things in the world. Oh, look, there's a poor person on the television in, Africa or something like that. We've been desensitized as human beings to all the troubles in the world. And I think the empaths are here to rebalance that and to resensitize us towards feeling more, because I think we've been cultured out of the feeling senses. So I think the empaths have an important role to play to resensitize humanity, and it's so important for them to be who they are.
Yeah, so that leads me to at least two things, right? Which is that I think I mentioned this before, in the history of the world, as far as we know, there's never really been more than about 1 billion people in that, in that space. We go over a little bit, then we come back, and we go over a little, we come back. And now all of a sudden there's 8.1. I actually checked the other day. And I believe that even though a lot of negative things are coming with that, there's also a lot of positive things.
Yeah.
And it's very much, if we were to look at what's actually coming, I feel like there's 8 billion people because we are trying to shift the consciousness of the planet. Right. So that's important. That's the first step. And then the second thing is, there seems to be, and naturally there's going to be more empaths as part of that, but there also seems to be more empaths being born, sensitive people being born. And I say that, like, over the last 40, 50 years, since the 60s, really, that there's been this big shift. And what that means for me is that these people are naturally brought together and made aware of these sensitivities in themselves, because, and this is the shift from so we talked about the victim status, the dysfunctional empath, and then there's a shift to somewhat functional. You know, why were they brought here? Knowing that they are sensitive, that they, they know the difference between their stuff and somebody else's stuff. They can work with all of that. They are that level of sensitive. And now, what I'm thinking this is, as we become functional, is that the shift is that we're going to start working together. We are going to, by nature, be drawn together and bring those sensitivities together and work together. And so, what you're talking about in terms of that desensitization through TV, through radio, through all of that, is a functional aspect of that dysfunction
Yeah.
that has existed, the energy of that dysfunction. And what is coming is the empowered empath. Yeah, the truly connected. And I don't mean as individuals, because there's tons of stuff out there claiming all sorts of connectivity. But I would say that when we actually see connectivity to each other, to as you say, to that star seed aspect. Why are they here? What did they come for? What did they bring? What are their true gifts? And then offering that to the world is a really powerful shift.
And I think there's another level on top of that too, Mike, and that is that this has to do with the evolution of humanity. And when we look at advanced civilizations, from what we know through different ways to get information about advanced civilizations, a lot of them speak without words. They telepath. And when you telepath, you are in the same energy field and you send thoughts to another person straight to their mind. So you've got to have an open receptivity to the energy field of another to receive language. I know in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they had the Babel fish that Arthur Dent would stick in his ear when Douglas Adams wrote that book back in the 70s. You take this Babel fish and you stick it in your ear and it translated. But my experience of people who have made contact with off-world groups, even in sessions, is that there is a thought exchange. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're an empath, you're getting ready for telepathy, I feel, at the high level, strategic, evolutionary type thing. Maybe we should be calling them telepaths or something like that, because people are getting ready for that. So I think that there's something really, really important here for the empaths to know and understand their role in the evolution of humanity.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing that I love most about it, Pete, is that all of this illusion that we are in right now, where we are believing all the nonsense that we're being told, whether we do or not, doesn't matter. We don't know what to believe because there's such a volume of it.
Yeah.
But when we're in that real telepathic stage, there cannot be any lying, because you will know straight away. It's like when you lie to yourself, you know it.
Yeah.
So when you do it to others, you'll know it. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think there's some shift in that means that we have to be, as this evolves, true to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess most of the guys out there are wondering, well, yeah, I think I'm one of these people. I identify with what Mike and Pete are talking about. What do I do about it? And maybe we can offer a couple of hints that maybe to go back and to install a different type of energetic reading system pre-birth is the way that you and I have been working with this for a while now.
Mm.
And, without trying to go through the intricacies of that, but to go back and to install, an understanding that, you can observe and not absorb, and you can know what's yours and what's someone else's, and to give people the power of energetic discernment, and to install that pre-birth actually restarts the infrastructure of their life and changes the way in which they interact with the world. Empaths are super sensitive on a planet that is insensitive. And that's the mismatch that we have here in one sentence. But it doesn't have to be that way. If empaths are here super sensitives with the right infrastructure for this type of planetary environment, they can survive in our society in ways that weren't possible before.
Yeah. And what I see with all of that is that there's two aspects to this, and they they both relate to different podcasts that we have planned and all of that. Is that doing this empath session that people have done, and I found it took a couple of times. I think Dione did to really install that the way you're saying.
Yeah.
and then have that really reflect throughout our lives so that we come back to this moment after an hour and a half, 2 hours, and goes feels completely different.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. And then the other one is to look at the family lineage. How have we shown up in past lives, but how have we shown up in family lineage? Why do we come down to that family? So is that when we fix all of that into the pre-birth moment as well, those shifts, they go back in that direction. We can pass those shifts forward. Um, Everything changes.
Yeah.
Actually, we look around and go, hey, everything has changed. And I feel different with my family. I feel different in the world. Um, I feel different with other people's energies. And I just think it's a huge and beautiful offering to be able to give to yourself, to be able to connect at that level. Because, I mean, obviously there's the shifts.
Hmm.
And as you know, I think the more functional we are, the more of that higher aspect we step into, that natural kind of telepathy, even if at this stage it may just be knowing the feeling, not necessarily the specific thought. But that in itself is going to make a massive difference because we're all together. If I go to a party and everyone's an empath, right, and we are all just functional, at least, if not really, really empowered, then
Yeah.
we are all empowered together. And, it's going back to that David Hawkins book that we talked about last week, Power versus Force.
Yeah.
It's not going to take everyone to get into the space to totally shift our planetary experience.
Yeah. And is this a good time to tell my empath joke?
Go on, go for it.
Okay. Three empaths walk into a bar, and they walk up to the bar, and the barman says, "What can I get you?" And they all speak at once. And they say, "We'll have what everyone else is having."
Nice.
Yeah. So my advice to the empaths is be careful walking into a bar. I mean, it gives a whole new perspective on you know picking up going into bars for a pickup.
Yeah. It does. It does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what
Um,
have we got today?
all right, I'm just going off camera for about 3 seconds because I haven't got a go gadget arm, and my bookshelf is right here, and it's like all the wisdom falls out of the bookshelf onto me.
Perfect.
So here I am. Here's the book. A lot of people know Anita Morjani from the book Dying to Be Me, which was her first book. And Hay House really got behind it. And Wayne Dyer in particular wrote the foreword and really, he promoted her there. But she's done some other work since, and she does a lot of time on the speaking circuit. But this is her book, Sensitive is the New Strong. And she writes about what it's like to be an empath. And she talks about what it means for the body. There's chapters in here like being spiritual means being yourself. And I love that because it gives people permission to do that. And, she asked the question in this chapter, empath, blessing or curse? And there's not an empath on the planet who hasn't asked that one.
Yeah.
So, I've always found her to be a lady of simple wisdom and deep humility.
Hmm.
And if you know Dying to Be Me, then you'll know that she was diagnosed with cancer. She had tumors in her the size of lemons. She was on her way. Then she was told she had to stay and be a messenger of something else. The tumors disappeared. The doctors kept her in hospital for weeks doing more tests, trying to find them, rather than just say, here's a miracle. Dying to Be Me was a great book, but this too is a great book written by a humble and very important message.
Beautiful.
So over to you, Mike. A few hints for the guys listening.
Well, I would notice as an empath what you're drawn to. Yeah. And particularly the messages that you're being drawn to, because let's just go point by point because this is important. If you're finding yourself in any kind of victim state, and what I mean by that is other people are affecting you negatively, it's all their fault, blah, blah, blah. Please read that book, read all the books you can find, make the shift, and particularly like get this work installed in you, right? Come to one of us, get this work installed in you, because I think this is super important to becoming functional. And then looking at how you are functionally, knowing that aspect of whether this is yours or not yours, all of that, being able to tell that and develop a practice where you can go and ground anybody else's energy. Um, to go and hug a tree, to stand barefoot outside, anything like that. Um, it's not about whether we can be functional and hold against it. It is just this opportunity to shift it along and be back to who you are really, really quickly. Yeah. And so if you're already doing that, cool. Yeah. So the third stage, and I think this is really interesting, is to just move as much as you can to finding other empaths. So
Yeah.
lots of the stuff out there about empowered empaths is this deep connection with finding who you are spiritually. It's exactly what you were just talking about, Pete. But that still leaves us alone. There's lots of people out there who feel this deep sensitivity, and they are essentially alone. They're the only one in their family who is doing this, all of that. And so, this is why I find if you can connect with other people who are that sensitive and help them become empowered, you start to develop groups, friendships, people who are truly affecting the world in positive ways because they're taking that sensitivity out into the world and being strong about it. I mean, it's interesting that you chose that book because there's the words. So there you go, 3 points that I think are making a big difference in the world, and yeah, that's my gift. Those 3 points.
Fantastic. Well, there's something that I'd like to just offer as we head towards a wrap. I just want to say to all the empaths out there, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, for being part of this reset of the sensitivity of humanity. Thank you for having the courage to be here. I know it's not comfortable. This is not a comfortable planet for the sensitive types. I just want to say thanks, guys. So grateful to have you here. We get it. We get hit as well. We've got some strategies in our bag now that have helped us greatly, and keep going because we need you.
Yeah, agreed. See you next week.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.